Hi, and welcome to the Men on the Path to Love podcast. The Rebound or Rebuild, Why Rushing into the Next Relationship Keeps Men Stuck episode. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. I coach men who are rebuilding their lives after a breakup or divorce, helping them understand their relationship patterns, to grow into the best version of themselves, and create deeper love and real connection, showing up differently for the next chapter of their lives, so they can live the life they love. So, after a breakup or divorce, a lot of men think the solution is simple. You just move on, find someone new, start fresh. And for a moment, that can feel like progress, like you're moving forward. But what if jumping into the next relationship is actually the very thing keeping you stuck? Well, that's what I'm going to be talking about in this second episode in my series on rebuilding after breakup or divorce. Now, in the last episode, I talked about recognizing your relationship patterns. In this episode, I'm taking that one step further. Because once you see your patterns, you're faced with a choice. Either repeat my patterns or rebuild from them. And man, I know this personally. And I've talked about this a lot on this podcast. For a long time, I had a pattern of overlapping relationships. I just moved on quickly, sometimes before I fully processed the last one. And at that time, I told myself I was just moving forward, doing what I had to do. But in reality, I was avoiding something. And it wasn't until I slowed down and really looked at that pattern that things began to change. And this isn't just personal. I've seen it with the men I've worked with, and it's backed by research. And I'll bring up attachment theory again. The studies show that after a breakup, especially for men, there's often this strong pull to reattach fast. Why? Because relationships don't just meet emotional needs, they regulate our nervous system. And when that connection is gone, it can feel like a kind of withdrawal, like you need it. Research on trauma bonding and intermittent reinforcement shows that we can become conditioned to emotional intensity, even when it's unhealthy, when it's not good for us. And when that relationship ends, the brain doesn't just miss the person, it actually misses the pattern, that subconscious pattern that it wants to go back into. So what do a lot of men do? They try to recreate that pattern. I'm going to go in deeper as to why this happens and what you can do about it. But first, I'm going to tell you about Ray, not his real name. Ray came to me after a major breakup, a relationship that had lasted over 5 years. He was referred to me by his therapist to work on his anger. And I gotta say, to his credit, he owned it. He said, yeah, man, I lose my temper sometimes, and I can be a real a-hole. So he admitted it. But he also said something else that stood out. He said, every time I messed up, I apologized. I didn't mean anything by it, and we would just make up, and all was good. Well, after his last blow-up, his thinking was, if he apologized, she'll just take him back. But this time, she had it. She was done. So, we started working together on some things to help him with his anger and moving forward. So we worked together on mindfulness, regulating his emotions, self-compassion, accepting that the relationship was over, and actually talking about the grieving process of the loss of the relationship. Well, the thing was, Ray was resistant. He just kept saying, look, all I got to do is get back out there, man. I'll just move on, and that'll teach her. like he was getting some kind of revenge or something. And he even told me that he had his eye on this woman at the gym where he works out. And that's when I challenged him. And I told Ray that if he didn't start rebuilding, he's just going to repeat the same patterns over and over. And that it wasn't just about what he did wrong. It was about understanding why it kept happening over and over, those patterns. Well, he pushed back and was like, yeah, man, I know what I did wrong. I learned my lesson. I'm good, Well, during the next session, he told me he had asked the woman out from the gym. And he said, Bill, I hit a home run, man. The chemistry is amazing. And he felt great. He was confident. And he just knew he was in a better place. Then he told me he didn't need to continue working together. So I wished him well, and that was it. Well, fast forward about 3 months later, I got a call from Ray. And this time, he wasn't in a good place. He was quite humble. He said, Bill, I think I rushed into this too soon because there were all kinds of problems going on in this new relationship. So I asked him if he was ready to rebuild. And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, I'll do whatever it takes. And that was the beginning of his real rebuilding. Now, here's what I take away from Ray's story. Chemistry can feel like progress, that you're moving forward, but it's not the same as growth. Attraction and chemistry is not the same as growth. And simply being aware of what you may have done wrong isn't transformation. No. And most importantly, you don't break your patterns by changing partners. You break your patterns by changing yourself. So, why do a lot of men rush into the next relationship? And frankly, women do it too, but I'm here to talk about men, right? So I'm going to break it down for you. Men tend to rush into the next relationship because, for one, to avoid the pain. The pain of the loss of the relationship. Sitting with that grief, or maybe it's rejection, or feeling like a failure. And all those feelings are uncomfortable, right? And it hurts. And a new relationship becomes a distraction, this new shiny object that he wants to go for. Another reason is that loss of identity that men can go through. After a breakup or divorce, a lot of men don't just lose a partner, they lose a sense of who they are. Another thing is that they need validation or having to repair their ego. Because it's a lot going through this loss of a relationship. A new relationship can feel like proof. Like, yeah, man, I still got it, right? And another part of why men rush in too soon is when the loneliness kicks in. It kind of goes along with the pain, but it's that silence and that emptiness and that void after a relationship is over. That emptiness, that loneliness can feel really overwhelming. So moving on to the next one is what they want to do. And one final thing I'll say is that after a breakup or divorce, they may have this false sense of confidence. Like with Ray, oh, I know what I did wrong. I won't do it again, But the thing is, having that insight without doing the work, without rebuilding, it doesn't create change. And you just go into the next relationship repeating the pattern again. That's just human nature. It's how we work, how our brains and nervous system work. Now, if you want to stop repeating the same relationship, you have to shift your mindset. From how fast can I move on to what do I need to understand before I move forward? Or the mindset from who's next? to who do I need to become? And the mindset of, man, I don't want to feel this, to what is this feeling trying to teach me? These are all opportunities to learn and grow, to rebuild, to be different in the next relationship. So I have a few questions for you that every man should sit with before dating again after a breakup or divorce. First one is, what patterns did I bring into my last relationship? All right. What emotions do I still need to process? What would I do differently? Not just in how I behave, but in terms of my own awareness. What would I do differently? And another really important question to ask is, am I looking for connection or some sort of relief? From the void, from the pain, from all that previous relationship stuff. And fellas, if what I'm talking about in this episode is hitting home for you, just understand this is exactly the kind of work I help men do. Not just to move on, but to rebuild in a way that creates something better next time. You can learn more about working with me by visiting my website at menonthepathtolove.com. And if you're ready to take that next step, you can actually book a free confidential discovery call with me right there at menonthepathtolove.com. Okay, now it's time for my quote of the week. And this one comes from an unknown source. And I wish I could take credit for it because it's so powerful. It says, quote, "You don't heal by finding someone new. You heal by becoming someone new." Enough said. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast, the Rebound or Rebuild, Why Rushing into the Next Relationship Keeps Men Stuck episode. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. Thank you so much for listening. Now, coming up on the next episode, as I continue my series on rebuilding after breakup or divorce, I'll be diving deeper, man. Because this episode you're listening to right now was why rushing into a relationship keeps you stuck. But the next episode is about something even more uncomfortable, okay? It's the space between relationships, why it matters, and why a lot of men, most men, frankly, avoid it. And how that space is actually where real transformation happens. So here's a question for you to sit with until then. Can you be alone without rushing to replace what you lost? Think about it. And if this episode hit home for you, or you know someone who needs to hear it, then please share the link and share the love. And until next time, keep your heart open and stay on the path to love.